By then, I'd learned how to hold myself accountable, and I knew I could take a man's soul in the heat of battle. I had overcome many obstacles and realized that each of those experiences had calloused my mind so thick I could take on any challenge. All of that had made me feel like I dealt with my past demons, but I hadn't. I've been ignoring them. My memories of abuse at the hands of my father, of all those people who called me nigger, didn't vaporize after a few victories. Those moments were anchored deep in my subconscious, and as a result, my foundation was cracked. In a human being, your character is your foundation, and when you build a bunch of successes and pile up even more failures on a fucked up foundation, the structure that is the self won't be sound. To develop an armored mind, a mindset so calloused and hard that it becomes bulletproof, you need to go to the source of all your fears and insecurities. Most of us sweep our failures and evil secrets under the rug, but when we run into problems, that rug gets lifted up and our darkness re-emerges, floods our soul, and influences the decisions which determine our character. My fears were never just about the water, and my anxieties toward class 235 weren't about the pain of first phase. They were seeping from the infected wounds I've been walking around with my entire life, and my denial of them amounted to a denial of myself. I was my own worst enemy. It wasn't the world or God or the devil that was out to get me. It was me. I was rejecting my past and therefore rejecting myself. My foundation, my character was defined by self-rejection. All my fears came from that deep-seated uneasiness I carried with being David Goggins because of what I'd gone through. Even after I reached a point where I no longer cared about what others thought of me, I still had trouble accepting me. Anyone who is of sound mind and body can sit down and think of 20 things in their life that could have gone differently, where maybe they didn't get a fair shake and where they took the path of least resistance. If you're one of the few who acknowledge that, want to callous those wounds and strengthen your character, it's up to you to go back through your past and make peace with yourself by facing those incidents and all of your negative influences and accepting them as weak spots in your own character. Only when you identify and accept your weaknesses will you finally stop running from your past. Then those incidents can be used more efficiently as fuel to become better and grow stronger. Right there on Mom's couch, as the moon burned its arc in the night sky, I faced down my demons. I faced myself. I couldn't run from my dad anymore. I had to accept that he was part of me and that his lying, cheating character influenced me more than I cared to admit. Before that night, I used to tell people that my father had died rather than tell the truth about where I came from. Even in the SEALs, I trotted out that lie. I knew why. When you get beat up, you don't want to acknowledge getting your ass kicked. It doesn't make you feel very manly, so the easiest thing to do is forget about it and move on. Pretend it never happened. Not anymore. Going forward, it became very important for me to rehash my life, because when you examine your experiences with a fine-tooth comb and see where your issues come from, you can find strength in enduring pain and abuse. By accepting Trunnis Goggins as part of me, I was free to use where I came from as fuel. I realized that each episode of child abuse that could have killed me made me tough as hell and as sharp as a samurai's blade. True, I had been dealt a fucked up hand, but that night I started thinking of it as running a 100-mile race with a 50-pound ruck on my back. Could I still compete in that race even if everyone else was running free and easy, weighing 130 pounds? How fast would I be able to run once I'd shed that dead weight? I wasn't even thinking about ultras yet. To me, the race was life itself, and the more I took inventory, the more I realized how prepared I was for the fucked up events yet to come. Life had put me in the fire, taken me out, and hammered me repeatedly, and diving back into the Bud's cauldron, feeling a third hell week in a calendar year, would decorate me with a PhD in pain. I was about to become the sharpest sword ever made. See, most civilians don't understand that you need a certain level of callousness to do the job we were being trained to do. To live in a brutal world, you have to accept cold-blooded truths. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not necessarily proud of it, but special ops is a calloused world and it demands a calloused mind. Hell Week had ended 36 hours early. There was no pizza or brown shirt ceremony on the grinder, but 25 men out of a possible 156 had made it. Once again, I was one of the few, and once again I was swollen like a Pillsbury doughboy and on crutches with 21 weeks of training still to come. My patella was intact, but both of my shins were slivered with small fractures. It gets worse. The instructors were surly because they'd been forced to call Hell Week prematurely, so they ended Walk Week after just 48 hours. By every conceivable metric, my chances of graduating were looking bleak once again. I was fucked. When I moved my ankle, my shins were activated and I felt searing pain, which was a monumental problem because a typical week in Buds demands up to 60 miles of running. Imagine doing that on 2 broken shins. Most of the guys in class 235 lived on base at Naval Special Warfare Command in Coronado. I lived about 20 miles away in a $700 a month studio apartment with a mold problem in Chula Vista, which I shared with my pregnant wife and stepdaughter. After she got pregnant, Pam and I remarried. I financed a new Honda Passport, which put me roughly $60,000 in debt, and the 3 of us drove out from Indiana to San Diego to restart our family. I just cleared Hell Week for the 2nd time in a calendar year, and she was set to deliver our baby right around graduation. But there was no happiness in my head or my soul. How could there be? We lived in a shithole that was at the edge of affordability, and my body was broken once again. If I couldn't make it through, I wouldn't even be able to afford rent. Would have to start all over and find a new line of work. I could not and would not let that happen. The night before first phase kicked back up in intensity, I shaved my head and stared into my reflection. For almost 2 years straight, I've been taking pain to the extreme and coming back for more. I'd succeeded in spurts only to be buried alive in failure. That night, the only thing that allowed me to continue pushing forward was the knowledge that everything I'd been through had helped callous my mind. The question was, how thick was the callus? How much pain could one man take? Did I have it in me to run on broken legs? I woke up at 3:30 the next morning and drove to the base. I limped to the booze cage where we kept our gear and slumped onto a bench, dropping my backpack at my feet. It was dark as hell inside and out, and I was all alone. I could hear the rolling surf in the distance as I dug through my dive bag. Buried beneath my dive gear were 2 rolls of duct tape. I could only shake my head and smile in disbelief as I grabbed them, knowing how insane my plan was. I carefully pulled a thick black tube sock over my right foot. The shin was tender to the touch, and even the slightest twitch of the ankle joint registered high on the suffering scale. From there, I looped the tape around my heel, then up over my ankle and back down to my heel, eventually moving both down the foot and up my calf until my entire lower leg and foot were wrapped tight. That was just the first coat. Then I put another black tube sock on and taped my foot and ankle the same way. By the time I was done, I had 2 sock layers and 2 tape layers, and once my foot was laced up in the boot, my ankle and shin were protected and immobilized. Satisfied, I did up my left foot, and an hour later, it was as though both my lower legs were sunk into soft casts. It still hurt to walk, but the torture that I'd felt when my ankle moved was more tolerable, or at least I thought so. I'd find out for sure when we started to run. Our first training run that day was my trial by fire, and I did the best I could to run with my hip flexors. Usually, we let our feet and lower legs drive the rhythm. I had to reverse that. It took intense focus to isolate each movement and generate motion and power in my legs from the hip down. And for the first 30 minutes, the pain was the worst I'd ever felt in my life. The tape cut into my skin, while the pounding sent shockwaves of agony up my slivered shins. And this was just the first run in what promised to be 5 months of continual pain. Was it possible to survive this day after day? I thought about quitting. If failure was my future and I'd have to rethink my life completely, what was the point of this exercise? Why delay the inevitable? Was I fucked in the head? Each and every thought boiled down to the same old simple question. Why? The only way to guarantee failure is to quit right now, motherfucker. I was talking to myself now, silently screaming over the din of anguish that was crushing my mind and soul. Take the pain, or it won't just be your failure. It will be your family's failure. I imagined the feeling I would have if I could actually pull this off. If I could endure the pain required to complete this mission. That bought me another half mile before more pain rained down and swirled within me like a typhoon. People have a hard time going through buds healthy, and you're going through it on broken legs. Who else would even think of this? I asked. Who else would be able to run even 1 minute on one broken leg, let alone 2? Only Goggins. You are 20 minutes in the business. Goggins, you are a fucking machine. Each step you run from now until the end will only make you harder. That last message cracked the code like a password. My calloused mind was my ticket forward, and at the 40-minute mark, something remarkable happened. The pain receded to low tide. The tape had loosened so it wasn't cutting into my skin, and my muscles and bones were warm enough to take some pounding. The pain would come and go throughout the day, but it became much more manageable. And when the pain did show up, I told myself it was proof of how tough I was and how much tougher I was becoming. Day after day, the same ritual played itself out. I showed up early, duct taped my feet, endured 30 minutes of extreme pain, talked myself through it, and survived. This was no fake it till you make it bullshit. To me, the fact that I showed up every day, willing to put myself through something like that, was truly amazing. The instructors rewarded me for it too. They offered to bind my hands and feet and throw me in the pool to see if I could swim 4 fucking laps. In fact, they didn't offer. They insisted. This was one part of an evolution they like to call drown-proofing. I preferred to call it controlled drowning. With our hands bound behind us and feet tied behind our back, all we could do is dolphin kick, and unlike some of the experienced swimmers in our class who looked like they'd been pulled from the Michael Phelps gene pool, my dolphin kick was that of a stationary rocking horse and provided about the same propulsion. I was continually out of breath, fighting to stay near the surface, chicken necking my head above the water to get a breath, only to sink down and kick hard, trying in vain to find momentum. I'd practiced for this. For weeks, I'd hit the pool and even experimented with wetsuit shorts to see if I could hide them under my uniform to provide some buoyancy. They made it look like I was wearing a diaper under the tight ass nut-hugging shorts, and they didn't help. But all that practice did get me comfortable enough with the feeling of drowning that I was able to endure and pass that test. We had another brutal underwater evolution in second phase, aka dive phase. Again, it involved treading water, which always sounds basic as hell whenever I write it. But for this drill, we were fitted with fully charged twin 80s and a 16-pound weight belt. We had fins, but kicking with fins increased the pain quotient and stress on my ankles and shins. I couldn't tape up for the water. I had to suck up the pain. After that, we had to swim on our backs for 50 meters without sinking. Then flip over and swim 50 meters on our stomach, once again staying on the surface, all while being fully loaded. We weren't allowed to use any flotation devices whatsoever, and keeping our heads up caused intense pain in our necks, shoulders, hips, and lower backs. The noises coming out of the pool that day are something I'll never forget. Our desperate attempts to stay afloat and breathe conjured an audible mixture of terror, frustration, and exertion. We were gurgling, grunting, and gasping. I heard guttural screams and high-pitched squeals. Several guys sank to the bottom, took off their weight belts, and slipped free of their tanks, letting them crash to the floor of the pool, then jetted to the surface. Only one man passed that evolution on the first try. We only got 3 chances to pass any given evolution, and it took me all 3 to pass that one. On my last attempt, I focused on long, fluid scissor kicks, again using my overworked hip flexors. I barely made it. By the time we got to 3rd phase, the land warfare training module on San Clemente Island, my legs were healed up, and I knew I'd make it through to graduation. But just because it was the last lap doesn't mean it was easy. At the main Buds compound on the Strand, you get lots of loose coming through. Officers of all stripes stop in to watch training, which means there are people peering over the instructor's shoulders. On the island, it's just you and them. They are free to get nasty, and they show no mercy, which is exactly why I love the island. One afternoon, we split into teams of 2 and 3 guys to build hide sites that blend in with the vegetation. We were coming down to the end by then, and everyone was in killer shape and unafraid. Guys were getting sloppy with their attention to detail, and the instructors were pissed off, so they called everyone down into a valley to give us a classic beatdown. There would be push-ups, sit-ups, flutter kicks, and 8-count bodybuilders, advanced burpees, galore. But first they told us to kneel down and dig holes with our hands, large enough to bury ourselves up to the neck for some unspecified length of time. I was smiling my ass off and digging deep when one of the instructors came up with a new, creative way to torture me. "Goggins, get up. You like this shit too much." I laughed and kept digging, but he was serious. I said, "Get up, Goggins. You're getting way too much pleasure." I stood up, stepped to the side, and watched my classmates suffer for the next 30 minutes without me. From then on, the instructor stopped including me in their beatdowns. When the class was ordered to do push-ups, sit-ups, or get wet and sandy, they'd always exclude me. I took it as a point of pride that I'd finally broken the will of the entire Bud staff, but I also missed the beatdowns because I saw them as opportunities to callous my mind. Now, they were over for me. Considering that the grinder was center stage for a lot of Navy SEAL training, it makes sense that's where Bud's graduation is held. Families fly in. Fathers and brothers puff their chests out. Mothers, wives, and girlfriends are all done up and drop dead gorgeous. Instead of pain and misery, it was all smiles on that patch of asphalt as the graduates of Class 235 mustered up in our dress, whites beneath a huge American flag billowing in the sea breeze. To our right was the infamous bell that 130 of our classmates tolled in order to quit what is arguably the most challenging training in the military. Each of us was introduced and acknowledged individually. My mother had tears of joy in her eyes when my name was called, but strangely, I didn't feel much of anything except sadness. On the grinder and later at McPee's, the SEAL Public Choice in downtown Coronado, my teammates beamed with pride as they gathered to take photos with their families. At the bar, music blared while everyone got drunk and raised hell, like they just won something. And to be honest, that shit annoyed me, because I was sorry to see Buds go. When I first locked in on the SEALs, I was looking for an arena that would either destroy me completely or make me unbreakable. Bud has provided that. It showed me what the human mind is capable of and how to harness it to take more pain than I'd ever felt before, so I could learn to achieve things I never even knew were possible, like running on broken legs. After graduation, it would be up to me to continue to hunt impossible tasks, because though it was an accomplishment to become just the 36th African-American Bud has graduated in Navy SEAL history, my quest to defy the odds had only just begun.